guys tonight. It's a little lengthy, so I was going to hog the floor tonight and let Sharon speak it another night. And I don't know the message that I want to get out to you guys tonight. I think each and every one of you individually will take something personal from it, and that'll be whatever whatever the story means to you. I come from a long line of spiritual warriors. We've traced my family back to the mid-1200s in England, and it was a town called Whiten, and the founders were the Whitens, and shortly after that they changed the name to Whittington. It's Whittington, not Whittingham.
Oh, sorry,
okay.
I am so sorry.
It's okay. They changed the name of the village to Whittington and changed their names to Whittington. And we're not sure of the order. It was probably an order similar to that of the Knights Templars, but probably not that exact order, that had possession of the Holy Grail. They brought it to this village where it's been passed down through my family that the Holy Grail was buried under an old church there. Now, how many hundreds of years have passed since there? Apparently the ruins of the church are still there. The secrecy of the location of the church has been kept secret. But back in the day, a priest with the last name Whittington smuggled the Grail out of England and brought it to Mary's land, Maryland. And it is buried somewhere in Maryland. So the story goes through my family. My father, mother, they both passed on, rest in peace, you guys, and they're here. My mom's Brazilian. She's from Cruz das Almas, Brazil, which is in the north of Bahia, north of Brazil, up in the mountains. Cruz das Almas stands for City of Crosses. Every block, every intersection there has several churches on it. They held a record at one time, I believe, in Guinness for having the most churches in one town. Very spiritual people. The veil there between the dead and the living, there is none. The dead just walk there as if they're still living their lives among the living. And the living come to accept it, and it's not a big deal. Everybody in my family but me have been there, visited. I feel bad that I didn't get to go before my mom passed. That's on the to-do list before I pass. Hopefully Sharon will accompany me there. But she met my father after World War II. He was a 25-year retired Master Chief, served in World War II, served in Korea, Purple Heart recipient, Naval Intelligence. When they bombed Pearl Harbor, he was actually in the Philippines at the time. So the Navy knew that the next stop of the Japanese was going to be, and Linda, I know your heritage is half Japanese. I mean, no disrespect, honey, I love you. They knew the Japanese was going to the Philippines next, so all naval personnel was ordered off the island. Many injured people couldn't get on ships to get out of there, so the orders were, if you couldn't walk aboard a ship, you couldn't leave. So my dad left many friends behind. That haunted him all his life. He got on this ship, several hours out to sea, they engaged the enemy. It was the USS Pecos. They were sunk. He went into the water, one of the last people to go into the water. He was the radio man, so he's doing SOS, our location, what has happened to us, they go into the water. Little did they know that all the ships closest to them that could come and pick up survivors were ordered by the Navy not to go back for survivors because it was too hot with the enemy. The real hero of the story is Captain Abernathy of another ship, and God forgive me for forgetting the name of that ship. He ignored orders. He gave orders for his ship to turn around and go back for survivors. So my dad's in the water, I would have to say probably mid-afternoon one day, and in the water hanging onto a piece of wood the rest of that night till the following morning. So now you have to understand, he's deathly ill at this time because you're bobbing up and down in the ocean. There's gasoline, oil, God knows what else floating around on the top of the water. He's ingesting a lot of that. So he's not doing very well. I don't know how close to death, but he's not doing very well. So Sunrise comes and they hear a ship coming, but they can't see because it's all foggy. There's fog over the ocean. All he knows is that they think it's an enemy vessel coming, so they figure this is it. When the ship gets close enough, the fog miraculously clears and they see that it's a United States naval vessel. So it's a mad dash. All the sailors that survive, that are still floating in the water, are swimming to the ship. My dad's not strong enough to make it. He knows I'm not going to make it. He's doing his best. He tells me to hang on and kick with his feet towards the ship, but he's not going to make it. And he hears the captain give orders over the loudspeaker, make way to get underway. And he hears the engines kick on and the propellers kick on. He finds a rope dangling in the water, floating. He grabs a hold of this rope and he decides, they may drag me back dead, but they're not going to leave me here, they're going to drag me back. So he wraps the rope in between his legs, around his body, around his neck, all around. And he actually feels the ship start to get underway and him being drugged. And he hears a deep voice say, there's one more over the side. And he looks up and a very large, muscular sailor jumps over the ship and hanging on with one arm, he reaches down and grabs my dad by the scruff of his neck, picks him out of the water, tosses him onto the deck, where my dad passes out and was probably out for 24, 48 hours, deathly ill, laying on the deck of the ship. The corpsman made a makeshift tent over him to try and take care of him. He came to under the tent. They got him well enough to get onto his feet. He decided to scour the ship and find the sailor that saved his life. And he did that. He scoured that ship, talked to everybody. Not only did no one on the ship remember seeing the incident, they don't even remember seeing my dad get on the ship. They just know one minute he wasn't there, the next minute he was. So my dad knew the rest of his life that was his guardian angel that saved him. And we all knew that. Growing up and him telling us the story, we all knew that. He goes to Brazil after World War II, meets, falls in love with, and marries my mom. Has my two older sisters there, who are both extremely sensitive, just like my wife. Magnets for spirit. My mom's a magnet for spirit, was a magnet for spirit, now is with them. She gave me a speech and tells me the story. They moved back from Brazil to a naval base, a secret naval base in Northern California, where my dad is stationed. My dad goes out to sea, and my mom's there, barely speaks any English, just mostly Portuguese. Has my two sisters, I believe one's 8 years older than me and one's 10 years older than me. I haven't been born yet, so they're probably like 4 and 5. My dad comes back, his ship comes back from being out at sea, and my mom gets this call from the doctor of the base. Your husband has contracted spinal meningitis, encephalitis, and he will not make it to morning. So if you want to see him alive again, you must go to the base hospital right now. He's out of his mind, we've got him strapped to a bed. Get here as soon as you can. Someone will have to tell me if you know this. I know back then it was a death sentence. I don't know if they have a cure for it now.
I think so, but I had it as well when it was
Really?
2 weeks old, yeah.
What it was is that they didn't have a cure, but some people did survive it. They just had to go through the symptoms.
Back
so,
then?
Yeah, back then, and then automatically it would be like washed through their body away.
So for them so he must have had it pretty bad for them to tell.
It's like if you get attacked by a black widow, they prefer that you go through the symptoms before they give you the vaccination, because once you get the vaccination for a black widow bite, they can't give it to you anymore after that, because your body's already become immune to the vaccine itself.
Well, you can imagine what she must have been going through. So she gets a neighbor to watch my sisters. Gets a ride somehow to the hospital, but on her way to the hospital, she makes a stop at the church, the Catholic church on the base. Goes in there and prays to St. Jude to petition on her behalf to God to save my father's life. Gives St. Jude the rundown, you know the rundown, St. Jude, but can't leave me here with my two little daughters I don't speak the language, strange country, whatever. She makes a promise that if you spare my husband's life, I will from that day forward crawl on my hands and knees whenever I go to church. From the front door to the pew, from the pew to receive communion, back to the pew and out. She also made a promise to have another child. Well, she was warned not to have another child because the birth of my second oldest sister almost killed her, and she was told not to. So she goes to the hospital. My dad's passed out. He's in a coma. He's tied to the bed. She falls asleep at his bedside, wakes up in the morning, and there's my dad just staring at her. He's tied to the bed. And he says, Edith, what am I doing in the hospital bed here? And why am I stuck to this bed? My mom freaks out, yells for the nurses and the doctors. They come running in. They're all surprised at what had happened. And maybe this is where this comes in because they couldn't find any trace of the disease in him anymore.
After a while, the body will get rid of it.
So she did keep her promise. From that day forward, whenever she went to Mass, she did it on her hands and knees until she was too old and physically unable to do it any longer. And she did have another child. Well, she had my brother 10 years after me, but my mom always called me the miracle child. It used to make my sisters upset and jealous, but it is what it is. So I remember getting the speech when I was about 10 years old. They knew something was different about me, and they said, you're going to see a lot of spirit in your life. Don't be scared of them. They're just people like you and me. They just don't have a body any longer. And most likely, if they're showing themselves to you, there's a reason. Ask them what they want. What can I do to you? How can I help you? Why are you showing yourself to me? And I thought that was, at the time, 10 years old, pretty out there. But it wasn't long after that I had my first real hardcore experience. My sisters were hardcore flower children, hippies back in the day. And they rented a home. I don't know if you ever seen the movie The Burbs, but they rented this old home in Reseda, and the neighborhood was relatively new, but they had this old Victorian mansion-looking type home staying out by itself that they didn't demolish in the corner of the neighborhood that my sisters rented out with a bunch of other hippies. And my mom and dad never let me go over there because they knew my sisters were always smoking pot, getting drunk, doing God knows whatever, taking LSD, which in my naval days I've done it all. But I went there to spend one night. My parents went out of town and they said, okay, take it easy on them, don't go crazy. So they didn't have a party there, but they had a lot of friends over. And I remember sleeping in a sleeping bag that first night. And I was woken by one of her friends coming down the stairs, and she was dancing down the stairs. This really beautiful hippie girl that then I started realizing I didn't see her at the party. And she came down, she danced across the floor. We caught eye-to-eye contact. She danced and disappeared right into the fireplace. I screamed, I freaked out, I ran upstairs, jumped in bed with my sisters. They gave me the speech again. There you go. And I did see that spirit later that day before I went home. And what she told me was that she had passed from an overdose before my sisters had moved into the house. And I just told her, there's no judgment in heaven. Go. Wherever this light is, I'm told you can see a light. Wherever this light is, go to it because there's no judgment over there. And she went. So fast forward, I'm pushing 60 now. Many ghost-busting cases over the years. Nothing too extravagant that's probably even worth sharing. Just ghost stories. But several years ago, my wife and I worked a case, and a newlywed couple, we suspect that the husband, now looking back on it, we suspect the husband was demonically oppressed. And it started with her being sexually molested in the shower by an unseen force, and then it would sexually molest her in the bed at night, and she could sit there and watch her husband while it's happening to her, but she couldn't call for help. And he seemed to almost be in a comatose state while this was going on. So they asked us to come over. Sharon and I just sat down at the kitchen table, and they're across the room from us in a couch, and clear as day. We're provocation enough to these things when we go to these places, so we don't do provocation. It sounded like somebody inside that wall with a bat smacked it so hard that the people, the couple on the other side of the room, they actually got airborne off the couch. Then they never moved. They were so shocked, they just got airborne and sat right back down and just kept staring at us. And so we did our thing, but here's the big mistake. This is what I want you to take from this. We didn't know what we were doing. We did a Ouija board seance.
Oh,
But this is long before I became ordained and went down that road. So we do a Ouija board. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning and we're driving home from the case. And Sharon's phone rings. She looks at her caller ID. There's nobody on there. My dumbass tells her, answer it. She answers it. Nobody's there. We go home. That night, as I'm sleeping, I'm having a dream of somebody over me doing this.
Jesus.
To the point where it wakes me up once. And I'm like, what the shit? I'm just sweating profusely. I end up going back to sleep. And it's doing it again. I can't sleep the rest of the night. I wake up again, I can't sleep. That day, I was eating in the kitchen and I hear kids playing in the living room. Not the living room, the garage. There's a lot of kids in the neighborhood. I think maybe I left my garage door open. So I go out there and check. There's nobody playing, no kids playing in the garage. Later that day, I hear kids playing in the garage again. I get really pissed off. My dogs are barking. I go in the garage again. Nobody's out there. Later, I go out to do some gardening. I don't know if anybody has seen these birds. I've never seen these birds before or since. They weren't crows. They weren't blackbirds. In the sunlight, they looked a deep chocolate brown, but in the shade, they were jet black. They had like fluorescent green eyes. About this big. There's 2 of them above my front door. And every time I go out to do any gardening, they start dive bombing me and coming at me aggressively. It doesn't matter if I hit them with something or I shoot them with a coat, spray them with the hose. They just keep dive bombing to the point where it's just too uncomfortable to stay out there any longer. I go back in the house. A little bit later that day, I go into the garage. The garage is just a swarm of bees. I gently shut the door and I'm like, well, the first thing that comes to my mind is I can't afford a beekeeper to come over here. So I come up with this brilliant idea. I make this makeshift bee suit. Got a bag over my head with holes. And I got like 9 jackets on and 5 pairs of pants and got my pants pushed into my socks. And my plan is to go out into the garage, not swat at anything, because I don't know if they're African bees. I'm going to die. So I'm not going to swat at anything. I'm going to go over to the garage door, gently unlatch it, come back in the house, go out the front door, gently open the garage door, go back in the house and pray they leave. That's exactly what I did. I'm telling you. It was intense. Did that. Went out, opened the thing, went back in the house, went outside, opened the garage door, went back, back in the house. A couple hours later, I go out there, bees are gone. Thank you, Jesus. Shut the door. I'm sleeping again that night. My friend's back.
Jesus.
And I wake up, I jump out of bed into ankle-deep water. Water main in our bedroom burst.
oh no.
Flooded us out of the master bedroom. To this day, this was a while ago. To this day, we're still sleeping on a California Queen in the living room. We made that room an office after it all got fixed up. Now we have 2 offices, a workout room, and we're still sleeping in the living room. And we enjoy it because the kitchen's right there, the guest bathroom, the dogs love sleeping with us, the doggy door's there, and the big TVs. And it's much more quieter in that part of the house than it was in the master bedroom, so it all worked out. But it flooded us out of the room, and Sharon started, things were a little weird with Sharon, a little off.
I wish you were right here.
And I didn't bring it to her attention, and I don't know, this might even be the first time that she's hearing me say this, but I could tell there was something off about her. Just off. And that's when I started reaching out for help to people. You know, what have I gotten myself into? Something's here in the house. And I've talked to many demonologists, deliverance ministers, spiritual warfare ministers, exorcists, for help to try and get this thing out of the house. And I'm telling you, you'd be sitting watching TV and it would sound like a pterodactyl would land on the roof. Boom! And just run. Heavy hoofing with like claw, run across my roof. And run back to the other side and sound like it crashed through the roof into the attic. I go and peek in the attic, nothing's up there. Then I would hear what sounded like a banshee screaming in my backyard. And nobody could hear this. The dog never reacted, Sharon never reacted. So she's got an attachment I'm fearing by her behavior, but I know I'm the ultimate target. It sounds like a feral cat being ripped apart by wild dogs right in my backyard. I would even go out there and I could hear it 10 feet from me and there's nothing there. Then I start going out and seeing the solid three-dimensional person either standing across the street, and I think it's my neighbor at first. I wave, he doesn't wave back, I wave again. Is that my freaking neighbor? And he'll just like sink into the floor and be gone. I'm like, that's not the neighbor. You know, coming out from behind trees and then going back behind trees in my yard. It was just a bad time. So I reached out for help. The path that I got on eventually led to me becoming ordained. But it wasn't long after that, Sharon and I worked a case at my work because something followed me to work and jumped from me to the workplace. And started terrorizing the night nurses, scratching, biting night nurses in emergency, and people were freaking out. So the superintendent asked me and Sharon to come and investigate. Now here's another mistake. I should have turned that down because she was already, I feared something was happening, and she was the target that night. And we have pictures on the website where I'm taking pictures of her standing there talking to nothing, but in the reflection of the window you see something right up against her, talking to her.
Wow.
So, right after that, she comes home from work one day, and she's talking like she's drunk. And I'm like, honey, what's wrong with you? Have you been drinking? She doesn't drink or smoke. You know, like a bad tooth. Went to the dentist. God bless him, because he was misdiagnosed by the first two doctors we saw. The dentist went in there and said, you got to go see an ENT, a ear, nose, and throat specialist right now. We went, and it was a very rare form of tongue cancer called squamous cell carcinoma. Within a matter of 2 weeks, she couldn't even swallow water. And that eventually spread to her thyroid and became medullary thyroid cancer, which isn't regular cancer. It's the kind of thyroid cancer that spreads, which it did into a bunch of lymph nodes in her neck. And I talked to, I'm not a big fan of mediums, but I talked to some mediums who said she is under an insidious attack, an extreme insidious attack. And think of the insidiousness of the nature of this attack. Tongue cancer. You know, who gets tongue cancer like that? And, you know, doesn't want you to talk, doesn't want you to preach, doesn't want you to talk about Jesus or to command it to the foot of the cross. You know, wants to just, you know, that's, I mean, we went through hell she didn't speak for 6 months, had a feeding tube in for over a year. They wanted to take her tongue out at one time. We dodged that bullet. So after 35 straight treatments of radiation and 8 weeks of chemo, which almost killed her, we just recently found out all her doctors didn't expect her to live, and they didn't tell us that till just recently. Good thing they didn't. But we went through hell. My sister sent me a bottle of holy water from Lourdes, France. It's a grotto there where the Virgin Mary has appeared many times to people. and the waters there are considered holy and sacred. She sent me a bottle of that water. Somehow I was able to get that down her. I made her drink it. Bottom line is, I know what you're thinking. Did the chemo and the doctor save my wife's life? Absolutely. Was there also extreme divine intervention that saved her life? Absolutely, because when she was laying in bed with fentanyl patches and Loratab elixir, the strongest you can get, sometimes when I'm in real pain, I take some of that stuff. And I love that stuff. I would sneak out and go to the all-night prayer chapel by my church, and I did the same thing my mother did. I crawled on my hands and knees up to the altar, prayed for my wife's life, and told them that this is the path that I would be on if they saved her. So, anyway, so the point I want to get is Satan is a psychotic murderer who sat on the throne of his creator, God, and then tried to murder him and take over heaven with his fallen angels, who are older than time itself. We don't know how many of them there are. We don't know how powerful they are, what they're capable of doing. A demon once told an exorcist, if we could be seen, we would block out the sun. So we know that and we know that this is their world, so they're around us all the time. You have to be careful what you do, because you're all targets. And you got to fight back. So what I did from this point on was I took a year off because I wanted to get her better. Turned down a lot of cases. But it gave me time to meet my mentor, Deacon Katie McDonald, first woman to be ordained a deacon in the Catholic Church since 1000 AD. She's responsible for me becoming ordained. And she helped me. Then I started, it was like I hit the imaginary ding to start the fight. Because as soon as that happened, the demonic cases started rolling in. And I started working, and without sharing, because I was scared to death to expose her anymore, I knew that she was a target. Now my gift of discernment is I can see them, and I can also hear them, and it starts like a bumblebee in my ear, and then turn into actual clear voice, as if somebody's actually talking to me like this. And they tell me the terrible things that they're going to do to my wife if we don't get out of the home, I don't get her out of there. They're like gangsters, and they want to go after what you love. So, many exorcists, demonologists, spiritual warfare ministers, deliverance ministers, the legit ones have been called to this field. And they're trying to get me to stop talking about it, but the legitimate ones are called to this field. And many of them go their whole career and never work one demonic case. I happen to have worked 5 of them in a row, back to back to back. And the interesting thing about this was every client knew one another. They were either friends or they knew each other professionally. So they either knew each other personally or professionally. It all started with a friend of mine from work because something followed me to work. She had I believe her son was 30 years old, Down syndrome, sitting at home, and he would exhibit behavior like not wanting to sleep in his bedroom anymore. Now, autism, Down syndrome, they're very regimented. He wouldn't want to sleep in his bedroom anymore. He'd want to sleep in the hallway. He'd wake up screaming in the middle of the night, and then soil himself, which he would never do. He would sometimes do that by accident, but like never in bed, waking up screaming like something's trying to kill him. So she asked me if I'd come and check it out. So, the demon appeared to me as her daughter on that case. And when I realized it wasn't her daughter, everybody was downstairs and I was blessing the home. And I came upstairs and went into the master bedroom. Well, her daughter walked out to me and met me at the bedroom because that's where it was most powerful and they didn't want me going in the bedroom. So it stopped me dead in my tracks. I can start seeing my breath. I can start smelling. And I'm not even going to attempt to describe the smell. You know it when you smell it. And I know that that's not her daughter because I know the daughter's downstairs. When I start hitting it with holy water, it turns into like a pig cat type creature that runs at me, making me get out of the way, leaps over some stairs into the son's bedroom, onto a bed and out a second-story window. So we ultimately did an exorcism on that home, but the family did have to leave because at that time the exorcism, whatever I did there wasn't powerful enough, and it was still messing with the family, and we feared it was location there. So they moved. They're in Idaho now. I'm in constant contact with them, and they're still having some minor issues, but you know, good thing they did move. Things are better. But the doctor that she worked for started having convulsions out of nowhere. And when we went to go see her, she would just go, ow! And you would just see the bite mark appear on her hand. Ow! And you would just see the claw mark. She would go, it's right there. And you'd see this big heavy plant move. Then she started going into her convulsion, and I knew right away that's not a normal convulsion. So I made Sharon and another friend of mine put her down on this recliner chair in the living room. And I said, just hold on to her, we don't want her to fall and get hurt. And we all start praying, and I start pouring holy water over her head and doing stuff. And you could see just a black mist come down over all of us. Sharon's giving me the look, you know, it's cold. My friend's giving me the look. The lady's having this convulsion. And all of a sudden, I'm asking it to come out, get out of her, and it blasts right through me. It just blasts right through me, takes all the air out of me, and I almost feel like I'm about to pass out, but I don't. And they didn't even realize what happened. They're still praying over her, and I sense something behind me, and I turn and watch for this solid three-dimensional figure confronting you. It turns, it goes down the hallway. Now I feel it's in retreat. I've got to follow it. I follow it to the master bedroom. I could hear it going up a ladder that I had set up to go to the attic. So I turn, I go up the ladder. Good thing I had my glasses on, because as soon as I got to the top of the ladder and looked in, it's on all fours and it spits at me. So it gets all over my face. Now that's demonic venom. You don't want to ingest that stuff because you get violently ill and can possibly die from it. That's why so many people in my field have bad illnesses just out of nowhere because of these types of encounters. I call Katie. We set up the exorcism. The woman disappears as soon as I told her what was going to happen. We don't even know where she's at now. She left belongings there in the home. Gone. Boom. The investigator I had with me on that case calls me up. He's not feeling well. He thinks he's got an attachment. I go and put a blessing on him. By the way, one of my co-workers has a young daughter, autism this time, not Down syndrome, waking up in the middle of the night and being found in the living room with all the lights turned out, sitting in an Indian position, just looking at the TV and the TV not on, in the dark. And when she goes to ask her, honey, what are you doing here? What's wrong? Grandma's protecting me from the man with no face. Well, Grandma had died many years before the girl was even born, so she didn't know Grandma. So she asked me to come over. I didn't take Sharon. Kind of thought I should take her on this one. It's a good thing I didn't. They're all in the living room. I sense something not right in the master bedroom, and I start walking down the hallway. And it's so pitch black in there, but I can see in the doorway something's even darker than the dark. And before I know it, it is on me. And I don't know if I did this, but it felt as though I was off the ground, totally bent back to where I said, my back's gonna snap because I can't bend anymore. I can't scream, I can't talk, I can't move. And it feels like a giant has grabbed me and he's just crushing me. You don't have any fear at this time. You just figure, that I'm dying. Am I having a stroke? Is it something different? Because your mind can't wrap around. Your mind just cannot wrap around these things when they happen to you that fast. Bad electrical sensation starting in the feet that moves all the way up through the body. And it felt like it stopped my heart. Felt like it stopped all thought pattern. I'm oblivious to everything. And it feels like I'm actually being pulled down. And then I can just hear what sounds like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of souls just crying and in pain and in agony and crying and I hear a little voice say, "Pray, dummy, pray." Now here's the interesting thing. The voice was the voice of my mentor, Katie, but she's in Oklahoma. And we argue about this all the time because she's got strong discernment too. Because how do you know it wasn't me? How do you know I didn't know that you were in danger? We've already worked cases together. I trained you. How do you know I didn't know you were in danger? And that was me, telepathically telling me to pray, dummy, pray. I said, I'll give that to you. Maybe it was. I think, though, it was my guardian angel making him or herself, I think it's a she, sound like Katie, because I wouldn't have recognized another voice. I would recognize Katie's voice. And I have seen my guardian angel, and funny enough, she looks like Susan Sarandon. Much younger version of Susan Sarandon. True story, she saved my life twice. From drowning and from a car accident. But I start praying. The only thing I can think to pray is the Our Father, and I must have said it. It felt like I said it 50 times in a row. And all of a sudden, everything stopped. And I opened my eyes, and I don't really even know where I'm at. But as my eyes get accustomed to the blackness, I see that I'm looking at the ceiling. And I start looking around. I'm in the master bedroom. Something carried me all the way from the hallway to the master bedroom and laid me on the bed. I sit up. I go, what is going on here? I realized that I had defecated and urinated in my pants. Now, that hadn't happened to me since I was a little kid. So I knew something so horrible had reached into my very soul, and that I couldn't handle it, and I was done. So I got up, I'm embarrassed, I had a Redskin jacket on, go Skins, last night. I take my jacket off, I wrap it around me, because I'm embarrassed, and it's dark in the house, and I just walked out and I said, investigation's over, I've got some evidence, I'm going to go home and review it, I'll be in touch. Okay, let's get the lights on. They were already freaked out anyhow. They wanted to turn the lights on and let's get it done. And I leave and I go home. I was done. I said, this isn't for me. I can't keep them off me. I don't have the power to keep them off me. So then I get a call from Angela. Have you guys ever seen the original Wolfman? The Wolfman or the remake of the Wolfman? You remember Malerva, the gypsy woman? I go to see this woman because her story was so, I got demons trapped in my luggage. I gotta go check this out. So I go to her house, and it's pretty creepy. She opens the door, and I'm looking at this woman from the old country, old gypsy woman from the old country, speaking, she's, No, she had luggage. We saw the luggage move. We heard stuff in the luggage. I thought maybe she killed a kid, put it in the luggage. So we're feeling it around. She said, just get the luggage out of here. Don't throw it away, because if somebody else opens it up, the demon will come out. It'll get you, then it'll come and get me. But just do something with the luggage. I'm freaked out. I take the luggage to a pastor friend of mine, Pastor Karen, who did some deliverance prayers over and laid hands on the luggage. The luggage good, take it back to the lady. Said, I'm not going back by myself. I'm not taking Sharon to come with me. It took some convincing, but Pastor Karen went with me. We go back to get the lady her luggage, and we decide to pray, and I'm freaked out. It's 12 noon in the middle of summer in the desert, and she's got all her curtains open, but it's like a dungeon in there. And it's like, it's just bad. So we join hands, we're going to say some prayers. As I'm saying this prayer, all of a sudden I'm not there anymore. I just know that I'm looking up, and it's the brightest light I've ever seen, and appearing through the light is the silhouette of a person. And so many things are going through my head. Have I stroked out? Am I about to die? And then this person is one whole body of flame, nothing but flame. And he raises his right arm, maybe it's a female, not a sword, look just like an arm. And it makes the sign of the cross over me, and it floats over my head, and it makes the sign of the cross in all 4 areas of the house. And when it's done and it spins, I open my eyes back up, I'm back in the living room. Both the pastor and Angela are looking at me like this because they know something's happened to me, but they don't know what. The house smelled like a garden. There was so much light in there. And I still think Angela's crazy, but I do think she had demonic oppression and infestation going on, but they were gone. That was my vision of the Holy Spirit. I believe it was the Holy Spirit that got me back into doing what I do. I felt that God was sending me a message that He had my back, not to worry about it any longer. But God always tests you. The next case, the Burke case. Sharon's still recovering. Don't want to take her on this one. Mom calls me, single mother, 10-year-old and like a 14-year-old if I remember. You have to come over to my house. There's something wrong with my son. He comes home from school the other day and says there's a weird kid that approached him in the park that wanted to play with him, but nobody else could see the kid. The kid weirded him out and he ran home, and I think the kid was a ghost and the kid's now in the house. I said, well, tell me what happened. Well, he comes home and tells me the story. I got mad at him. I run outside. There's no kid. About 3 o'clock in the morning, my son climbs into bed with me, and I realize he feels wet. And he smells bad, and it's cold in here, and I turn around and there's nobody in the bed. The following morning, my son's having breakfast, and I ask him, did you come into my bed last night? And he says, no, Mom, that's the little kid, he's here. This is how fast this happens when you're targeted. This is how fast it happened. The following day, she calls me up, you must come now. My 10-year-old is not who he's supposed to be. Almost killed his older brother, and I fear for my life.